Honourable members, I guess I need a gavel. Good morning, honourable members. I see quorum. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I must inform members that the clerk of the committee cannot receive motions or is ready to receive motions for the election of the chair, but that's all that I can do. We can't receive any motions or entertain any debate at this point. So we can now proceed to the election of the chair. Pursuant to Standing Order 106.2, the chair must be a member of the official opposition. So I'm ready to receive motions.
So I will move to nominate Tom Kimmich for chair.
So it's been moved by Mr. Cooper that Mr. Kimmich be elected as chair of the committee. Are there any other motions of nomination? Seeing none, is it the pleasure of the committee to adopt the motion? And good. Everyone in Zoom as well? Good. So I declare the motion carried and that Mr. Tom Kimmich is duly elected chair of the committee. Would you like to take the chair? I prefer you there. the privileges and obligations of power. Okay. So, I'll just give you this.
I'll grab my phone. Yeah.
And then if you go through this,
Bon, collègues, je vous remercie pour votre
Colleagues, thank you for your confidence.
For letting me chair this meeting. I chaired the National Conservative Caucus in the last Parliament, so going from 150 of them to the few of you will be delightful and hopefully much easier. So I thank you for that. We have to now elect vice chairs now that we have a chair. So this is the first meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Again, today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. So members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. And regarding the speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do our very best that we maintain a consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether participating virtually or in person. So I'll try to catch everybody's attention. I see Mr. Frederick Katos has his hand up. If you just give me one moment to read through this, and I'll recognize you. Okay. So I want to take this opportunity also to remind all participants to this meeting that you can't take screenshots, you can't take photos or video during the meeting. Those are part of the members' privileges that are protected. The proceedings are available via the House of Commons website, so you can take screen caps there, or your staff can as well. You can do it there. And then given the ongoing pandemic situation in light of the recommendations from public health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy, October 19th, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, the following is recommended for all those attending the meeting in person. Anyone with symptoms should participate by Zoom, not attend the meeting in person. Everyone must maintain 2 meters of physical distancing, whether seated or standing. Everyone must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room. It's recommended in the strongest possible terms that members wear their mask at all times, including when seated. Non-medical masks, which provide better clarity over cloth masks, are available in the room. And then everyone, there's all the proper hygiene that we all expect to do. Wash your hands. Those of you who have children and kids, you probably told us a million times to wash their hands. I tell my kids, wash their hands. So please do that. And then as chair, I'll be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting. And then thank you all for the cooperation. We have some routine motions after the election of the vice chair. I didn't forget, Madam Chair. But Mr. Frederick Katos, you had your hand up before. Did you just want to say something now?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I didn't mean to interrupt your notes to the committee. I was just so eager to congratulate you that I raised my hand. But I'd also like to nominate, in the spirit of what you just said, our vice chair, and that would be nominating Jean Yip to play that role.
Okay, is there any other nomination? Seeing none, I believe, Madam Yip, you are elected Vice Chair of the Public Accounts Committee. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with all of you, and a special welcome to the new members of the committee, and of course to some of the old members. Seasoned, how about that?
Bon, pour ce comité aussi, nous avons
For this committee also, we also need a second vice chair. Usually it is a member of the next party recognized in the House of Commons. So I would need a nomination, please, for second vice chair. Ms. Shanahan, yes. First, congratulations, Mr. Chair, and to you, Ms. Yip. And I'd like to nominate Ms. Nathalie Sinclair-Desgagnés as second vice chair.
vous acceptez.
You accept the nomination, I hope. Otherwise, it would be quite complicated. Yes, thank you. All right, seeing no other nominations, congratulations. Ms. Sinclair-Stevens, Sinclair-Desgagnés. My apologies. Congratulations once again. Thank you very much.
Elect another. Don't we elect another Vice Chair? Colleagues, we have routine motions that were distributed to all of you now. Your chair is now allowed to move motions, and therefore I give it to the committee. Sorry, I can't see your name. Madam Bradford?
Bradford?
Please go ahead.
Yes. Okay, with your permission, congratulations, Mr. Chair, on your election, and to the vice chairs as well. I look forward to working with you all. So I'll proceed to read the motions then, with your permission. The first motion is with respect to analyst services, that the committee retain as needed and at the discretion of the chair the services of one or more analysts from the Library of Parliament to assist it in its work.
Is there any debate on the motion? No. Is the committee agreed? Agreed. Next motion.
Subcommittee on Agenda and Procedure, that the Subcommittee on Agenda and Procedure be established and be composed of 5 members, the chair, 1 member from each recognized party, and that the subcommittee work in a spirit of collaboration.
Is there any debate on this motion? Seeing none, are we all agreed? Agreed. Next motion.
Meeting without a quorum, that the chair be authorized to hold meetings to receive evidence and to have that evidence published when a quorum is not present, provided that at least 4 members are present, including 2 members of the opposition parties and 2 members of the government party. But when traveling outside the parliamentary precinct, that the meeting begin after 15 minutes, regardless of members present.
Y a-t-il du débat?
Is there a debate? Everybody's in agreement?
Time for opening remarks and questioning of witnesses. That witnesses be given 5 minutes for their opening statement. That whenever possible, witnesses provide the committee with their opening statement 72 hours in advance. That at the discretion of the chair, during the questioning of witnesses, there be allocated 6 minutes for the first questioner of each party as follows for the first round: Conservative Party, Liberal Party, Bloc Québécois, New Democrat Party. For the second and subsequent rounds, the order and time for questioning be as follows. Conservative Party, 5 minutes. Liberal Party, 5 minutes. Bloc Quebecois, 2.5 minutes. New Democratic Party, 2.5 minutes. Conservative Party, 5 minutes. Liberal Party, 5 minutes.
Is there any debate on this motion? I see none. Are we agreed? Agreed. Next motion.
Document distribution. That only the clerk of the committee be authorized to distribute documents to members of the committee, provided the documents are in both official languages, and that the witnesses be advised accordingly.
Y a-t-il du débat?
Is there a debate? We are all in agreement? Yes? Next motion, please.
Working meals. That the clerk of the committee, at the discretion of the chair, be authorized to make the necessary arrangements to provide working meals for the committee and its subcommittees.
Is there any debate? No? We agreed? Okay.
Travel, accommodation, and living expenses of witnesses. That if requested, reasonable travel, accommodation, and living expenses being reimbursed to witnesses not exceeding 2 representatives per organization, and that in exceptional circumstances, payment for more representatives be made at the discretion of the chair.
I don't see any debate. Are we all agreed? Agreed? Okay.
Access to in-camera meetings. That unless otherwise ordered, each committee member be allowed to be accompanied by 1 staff member at in-camera meetings, and that 1 additional person from each House officer's office be allowed to be present.
Any debate? Are we agreed? Yes. Next motion.
Transcripts of in-camera meetings. That 1 copy of the transcript of each in-camera meeting be kept in the committee clerk's office for consultation by members of the committee or by their staff, and that the analysts assigned to the committee also have access to the in-camera transcripts.
Any debate? Are we all agreed? Yes? Okay.
Notice of motion. That a 48-hour notice interpreted as 2 nights be required for any substantive motion to be moved in committee, unless the substantive motion relates directly to business then under consideration, provided that A, the notice be filed with the clerk of the committee no later than 4 p.m. from Monday to Friday, B, the motion be distributed to members and the offices of the whips of each recognized party in both official languages by the clerk on the same day the said notice was transmitted if it was received no later than the deadline hour. C, notices received after the deadline hour or on non-business days be deemed to have been received during the next business day, and that when the committee is holding meetings outside the parliamentary precinct, no substantive motion may be moved.
Any debate? Are we agreed? Yes? Okay.
Orders of reference from the House respecting bills. That in relation to orders of reference from the House respecting bills, A, the clerk of the committee shall, upon the committee receiving such an order of reference, write to each member who is not a member of caucus represented on the committee to invite those members to file with the clerk of the committee in both official languages any amendments to the bill, which is subject to the said order, which they would suggest that the committee consider. B, suggested amendments filed pursuant to paragraph A at least 48 hours prior to the start of clause-by-clause consideration of the bill to which the amendments relate shall be deemed to be proposed during the said consideration, provided the committee may, by motion, vary this deadline in respect of a given bill. And C, during the clause-by-clause consideration of a bill, the chair shall allow a member who filed suggested amendments pursuant to paragraph A an opportunity to make brief representations in support of them.
Any debate? Are we agreed? Carry on.
Technical tests for witnesses. That the clerk inform each witness who is to appear before the committee that the House Administration support team must conduct technical tests to check the connectivity and the equipment used to ensure the best possible sound quality, and that the chair advise the committee at the start of each meeting of any witness who did not perform the required technical tests.
Any debate? Are we agreed? Carry on.
Linguistic review. that all documents submitted for committee business that do not come from a federal department, members' offices, or that have not been translated by the Translation Bureau be sent for prior linguistic review by the Translation Bureau before being distributed to members.
Y a-t-il du débat?
Any debate? Are we agreed?
Oui.
Yes? Next motion, please.
These are two routine motions, I don't know if she has them, that have always been adopted by this committee. So I'll give her a copy of it, and members, if
So
they wish.
which are these two motions?
Yeah, these two are ones that we've always adopted.
Okay. I'm being told by the clerk that there are two more routine motions, and they were distributed, this committee usually passes. Again, as your chair, I can't move motions. These would be committee chair and staff authorization and detailed action plans to address recommendations. So if there are members who wish to move these motions, hopefully you've read them, you might want to consider moving them, but if it's the will of the committee, we don't have to.
Do you mind just reading out the motion, the two additional motions? Yeah.
Well, I can't move a motion.
Oh, you can't? No, but so we're getting them? Is that what's
You are.
happening? Okay.
They were
Very good.
distributed to you by the
So
clerk of the
Valerie
committee.
can continue.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, okay.
Madam Bradford, absolutely you can, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
New motions that former committee recommended to future PACP. Deadline for responses to questions. That when takings are given by witnesses at committee meetings to provide further answers to questions or follow-up information, the witnesses be given 3 weeks to provide the committee with a written response. If a response is not received within the specified time, that the committee invite the appropriate accounting officer to appear before the committee to explain why the information has not been provided in the time requested.
So members have heard the motion. Is there any debate on this motion? I see none. Are we agreed? Yeah, okay.
Follow-up responses that pursuing to Standing Orders 108.1a and 108.3g with regard to any request for information or response contained in any report of the committee, the department or agency tasked with providing the request for information or response be obliged to provide it by no later than the deadline contained in the same report.
Any debate? I see none. Are we agreed? Yes? Okay.
Two others, so we. Oh, actually, I guess I have it here. There you go.
I'm new, sorry. Okay. Okay, so which are the two? We did the linguistic review, didn't we, or do I start with that one? Okay, so now it's committee chair and staff authorization.
Any debate? Sorry, were you finished reading the motion into the record?
Right, I believe the next one I'm to start with, I'll just check with the clerk, is committee chair and staff authorization? Yes. Great, okay, here we go. That the committee chair and staff be authorized to review government responses to recommendations made by the committee during the 43rd Parliament. Acknowledge by letter, on the committee's behalf, receipt of government responses where they respond clearly and completely to recommendations or request further information or clarification as required. Monitor the implementation of government commitments made in response to committee recommendations and request further information as required, and report to the committee on these activities in a timely fashion.
Is there any debate on this motion? I see none. Are we agreed? Yes. Please carry on.
Detailed action plans to address recommendations. That all organizations that have been subject to a performance audit or special examination by the Office of the Auditor General of Canada provide a detailed action plan to address the audit recommendations which have been agreed to, including specific actions, timelines for their completion, and responsible individuals. to the committee and the Office of the Auditor General of Canada within 6 months of the audit being tabled in the House of Commons. That organizations that are invited to appear before the committee to discuss the findings of an audit should provide an action plan to the committee no later than 48 hours prior to the hearing. That action plans and progress reports received by the committee be published on the committee's website.
Is there any debate? Chair? Yes, Madam Shanahan.
I'm just very pleased that this motion is here because it follows on work that we did in the 42nd Parliament, specifically addressing action plans that needed to be submitted to this committee following our studies. And so I'm very proud to see that it is here. So thank you very much. I certainly support it.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, are we in agreement? Okay, so that is the last routine motion. Madam Mayor, thank you, trial by fire at your first committee meeting. So thank you for taking care of that business. Now, typically at these first meetings, we move on to new business. So I'm just going to call, is there any new business from any member? Mr. Desjardins.
Nope. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And as a new member, too, I can sympathize. Thanks for your great service, Madam Bramford. But I do have a motion here that hopefully was distributed that I'd like to table for consideration. I believe, oh, it's being distributed now. Should I just read it out while it's being distributed? Sure. Move that the committee may meet in camera only for the following purposes. A, to consider a draft report. B, to attend briefings concerning national security. C, to consider lists of witnesses. D, for any other reason, with the unanimous consent of the committee. That all votes taken in camera, with the exception of votes regarding the consideration of draft reports, be recorded in the minutes of proceedings, including how many members or how each member voted when recorded votes are requested. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so typically I would then proceed to, is there debate on the motions? But before I do that, I'm getting advice from the clerk, so I'll do that first, and then I will recognize Madam Shanahan first, and I'll go around if there's others who want to speak to the motion. Okay, colleagues, so I got some procedural advice. I'm going to rule the motion in order because this committee is a master of its own domain. It can determine best how you want to proceed. Mr. Jarley has read the motion. You have the wording of it in both official languages as well. So I encourage you to, if you want to debate. So, Madam Shanahan, you were first, and I'll recognize Mr. Dong. And if you want to catch my attention, please raise your hand so I can see you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would like to hear Mr. Dargelet's rationale behind this motion, because at first glance, I'm failing to understand why we are putting a witness. All right, so let me just back up here. I've served on other committees, this one, including and also the Ethics Committee, and it was a disturbing trend to me to see that witnesses were being subjected, witnesses who are ordinary private citizens for the most part, and yes, they must appear in front of any committee. Well, they must. Normally we ask them to appear, and it's only failing that when the committee decides that they need to go further and subpoena a witness to cause them to appear. But there were a number of occasions, including a study where we were dealing with sexual aggression, online cyber sexual sensitive material and so on, where the witnesses were indeed some wanted to present to us and others did not. And I would be very, very uncomfortable that we could not take that decision as a group on what has normally been in this committee, Chair, you'll agree with me, a consensus type of a decision process, where that we would respect the desire of a witness to appear privately. And if there was a member here who, for some reason of their own, was going to insist that that witness testify publicly on information that we could just as well obtain in camera, it would not hamper our work in any way whatsoever. We obtain the same information and we're able to use it. We have very responsible procedures in place to get the information that we need as parliamentarians, but at the same time respect the witness. So I have great difficulty with this motion, and I cannot support it.
Mr. Dong, you were next.
What I'm going to say is pretty short. Madam Clerk, would it be possible for you to send a copy of the motion to members joining us virtually, myself included? I just, I didn't get anything on my P9, so I think it'll be very helpful if I get a copy of this motion. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Dong, absolutely. We'll make sure that's part of the process now that everybody gets an emailed bilingual copy given to you. The next speaker I have is Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I certainly salute the thought behind this motion, and in fact, the more public we can be, the better generally, and there is definite truth to sunlight being the best disinfectant. Unfortunately, as Ms. Shanahan pointed out, there can be occasions where this would be overly prescriptive, and one could think of many different scenarios. And as Ms. Shannon also said, we generally work by consensus as this committee. So, and I believe that it'll be generally the direction of this committee and of the members to have everything where we can be public. And I trust that that will happen. And for those reasons, we will have to decline to support. Although I do definitely salute the intent behind this, as it is as public and as open as we can be is definitely we should all strive to be.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the honourable members for considering this motion and the certain aspects of it that would increase our ability to have proper oversight on these committees. And I think it was pointed out by Madam Shanahan that consensus is often the procedure and tool that we come to make decisions. And I want to point members to consideration of the aspect of D. For all other reasons, with the unanimous consent of the committee, that power still is vested within the committee. And so we could still make consensus decisions on how we go into in camera. The purpose, of course, is to ensure that Canadians have the proper oversight of all committees. This is their institution, their house. We have to find ways to increase the ability of transparency, and that's what the intent of the motion is. And there have been times in previous parliaments where the government has tried to move committee meetings in camera to force difficult issues and votes behind closed doors and to avoid public scrutiny. So for the sake of Canadians and the ability to have proper oversight, I believe that these three aspects do cover the concerns raised by the members and provide Canadians with the kind of ability to have the confidence in this committee and in our institutions that this oversight has been proper and the decisions made in camera are for legitimate reasons. And that's the reason I bring this motion forward. And I just want to thank the members again for their consideration and again point to D for any matters of consensus. We can still go in camera, which has been the predominant concern. But thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Madam Shanahan.
I believe that Mr. Frederick had his hand up first.
Mr. Frederick, did you have your hand up? I missed it. If you did you want to speak to this?
It will be a close call, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who had their hand up, but since I'm speaking, I'll just agree with what Ms. Shanahan said. agree with what Mr. Lawrence said. This is with all due respect to our new colleague, and congratulations to him on his election. Looking forward to working with him. But I think these are sound points that have been raised in opposition to the motion, and I would request a vote on division.
Madam Shanahan, did you want to?
That we pass to the vote.
Just have a procedural matter. Just settle with the clerk. So give me 1 second. So, colleagues, is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this matter? Mr. Lawrence?
I'm just wondering, and I understand Mr. Desjardins, if I've got that correctly, if you want to have this on the record for whatever reasons, but I would kind of like to have the first. I wouldn't like the first vote of public accounts to necessarily be on division, and like it to be unanimous. And so, if there's any way, Mr. Desjardins, we could convince you to perhaps withdraw your motion, that would be fantastic, and I think would be a great note for the committee going forward. However, it is completely your right to head to a vote if that is your desire.
Mr. Desjardins, go ahead.
I want to thank the member for that suggestion. Of course, our job would be much easier if we can all agree on all things. And I think we'd be representing different groups. But I think Canadians from all stripes and patterns deserve to have a voice in this House, and I think this is something that Canadians have asked of us to present in committees, and I would like to go to a vote on this, record division. I think that's important for Canadians to know who would like to see members of this House and members of this committee who are in favor of ensuring that there are set parameters for in-camera use. I think it's a better mode of governance, but I think we'll test that in the vote. But thank you very much. I will not withdraw the motion.
As is your right, Mr. Desjardins. Je vais demander une dernière fois.
I will ask one last time. Is there another member who wishes to speak on this motion?
The vote then? Members, are you in agreement? Do you agree with the motion? Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry. Order. You can tell I've had to chair meetings of National Caucus, which are much longer. I'm just looking at everybody debating. I want to make sure you vote the way you intend to, not the way you think it should go or in your mind. Madam Clerk, please proceed with the recorded division.
The vote is on the motion by Monsieur Desjardins concerning going in camera. Madame Bradford.
Nay.
Mr. Hong.
I assume that you are calling me. My vote will be no.
Okay. Mr. Fredericatos.
Against.
Ms. Shanahan. Madam Shanahan.
No.
Ms. Yip.
No.
Mr. Bragdon.
Nay.
Mr. Cooper.
Against.
Mr. Lawrence.
Nay.
Madame Sinclair Desganet.
Je vote contre cette motion.
Puis Monsieur Desjardins.
In favor.
So that's 9 in favor or 9 against and 1 in favor.
So it is 9 against, 1 in favor.
Yes.
So the motion's defeated. Is there any other new business that any member would like to bring forward? Mr. Dong?
Point of order. Thank you, Chair. I just want to say hello to my new colleague, Mr. Desjardins. Don't let this to be, I'm very much in favor of Mr. Lawrence's point that I would love to see the first vote to be a consensus vote on the committee. But I also would like to point out that there are rules currently about what can be going into in camera. There's procedures about that. I just want to assure you that this doesn't mean that it's going to hinder any transparency of this committee. I look forward to fruitful discussions with my colleagues, but don't be discouraged by the vote. Thanks.
Absolutely, Mr. Desjardins. Go ahead.
Thank you very much to my honorable colleague on Zoom. Hopefully when this is a little easier and the variance not out of control like it is, we'll be have a chance to meet in person. But I want to thank you for your kind words, and I do believe that even against difficult decisions, we can have proper, cordial, and even consensus-based decisions. And I really look forward to the work that we do in this committee with each and every one of you. And I'll just add that, being an Indigenous person, oftentimes we're used to this. So don't worry about that. Thank you very much.
Is there any other new business that members would like to consider? Madam Yip.
I would like to suggest a training presentation from the Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation. Since we have so many new members here, I think it would be good to be comfortable to know what we do in public accounts.
So is that a suggestion or a motion or?
No, I'll make it a motion. Yeah.
You can make it into a motion.
Yeah, let's make it into a motion, then that way it's more formal.
Okay, I'll accept that. Is there any debate? I don't know, Madam Yip, did you want to add anything to that before I take a round of speakers? No? I'm looking to the room if anybody would like to speak on this matter. Mr. Bragdon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just say, I think that's a good idea, but I would limit that to probably one session of training. Several of us have been on other committees, but I think for the benefit of maybe a new person, one training session would be good, but I wouldn't want to see it prolonged over an extended period of time. So limit it to one session would be fine.
Madam, would you consider that a friendly amendment just to move on? We have training for one meeting. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll consider a friendly amendment. We all agree one meeting for training from the organization you mentioned. Is there anybody else who would like to debate on this motion?
Is there another member who wishes to speak to this motion? No?
Agreed. Agreed, Madam Yip. We'll do 1 day of training. I'll work with the clerk to set that up as well. Is there any other new business that members would like to consider? Please. Thank you. I see none, so thank you, colleagues, for letting me. Okay, I see. We're good to go. Colleagues, if you haven't gotten a copy of the Public Accounts of Canada, it's the big stack behind me here. The clerk can provide it to you. They come in both official languages. If you have two, like the way Ms. Shanahan has, so you can take two. They're really important documents. There are also digital versions of the documents that you can look things up much more easily in them than the paper versions, but some of us prefer paper. And thank you again all for making the time to be here. I look forward to working with all of you on this committee, and meeting adjourned.